Television is not the truth. Television is a goddamn amusement park. Television is a circus, a carnival, a traveling troupe of acrobats, storytellers, dancers, singers, jugglers, sideshow freaks, lion tamers, and football players. We're in the boredom-killing business. So turn off your television sets. Turn them off now. Turn them off right now. Turn them off and leave them off. Turn them off right in the middle of the sentence I'm speaking to you now. Turn them off.
Stop them. An idea whose time has come cannot be stopped by any army.
Welcome to another episode of Eradicating Program Ignorance. I'm your host, Roger Landry, and this is going to be another presentation of the town crier. Today we're going to break the mold a little bit. The last couple of weeks we've been discussing politics, and there was a need to do that. Not that that need no longer exists, it does. But if you stop and think, what is the one thing that is every bit as important as the political health of this country? I guess that would be the health of this country. And by that I mean, if you have a sick population, you have a much, much better chance of utilizing effective control mechanisms than if you have a healthy, vibrant society. Now, why would I even say something like that? Why would I even say something like that? I'm coming off immediately as a conspiracy theorist. Well, you're half right. Because this is probably one of the biggest conspiracies in the history of humanity. It's not a theory. There's plenty of facts to back it up. And we're going to go over some of them today. And excuse me, as we all know that every time I get ready to record a show or a commentary, my throat always starts to act up, but I think most of you are aware of that by now and tend to overlook it. So let's get into the meat of things. This is based loosely on an article I wrote not too long ago, and it is itself based on an accumulation of information over the years. We go back to that perspective issue. I am 64 years old. I was born in 1954. I have 3 generations of perspective. And believe me, when I was young, that was a pretty neat thing to have. At my age, where I can see the difference of what was and what is, sometimes it's a pretty scary situation. So the article that we're going to be basically taking a lot of our information from today is The Destruction of Our Health. Where do we go from here? Now, at the base of this article, and of course the link to the article and all of its contents are in the article that this show is embedded in. What you need to understand is that you're only going to get a small portion of what was presented in this article. There are many, many applicable videos, so on and so forth, but the link will be available to you to follow all of this. But the discussion points of this article, the commentary portion, is enough to fire up anybody who's got even half a brain. And part of the problem we suffer today is because of all of the components I'm about to discuss. Most people today can't lay claim to having half a brain. Believe me, I'm not insulting anybody. I speak the truth. Because we as Americans, and for this matter to a large extent all of humanity, are under fire. We are being poisoned from every direction. Now, I mean that. Every direction. There's no place to run. There's no place to hide. There's no way to escape. So even if you think there is, about the only option you have at this point is to stand fast and confront these violations. Because as you're about to find out, our air is being poisoned, our water is being poisoned, our food is being poisoned, Our schools are being poisoned. Our medication is being poisoned. I'm not bullshitting. You ought to know me better by now. Okay? On the Liberty Beacon alone, you can find hundreds of articles backing up everything I just said. And how has this happened, and when has this happened? Because I can remember as a kid living in one of the most healthy and vibrant societies that ever existed on this planet. And today, today, beyond a shadow of a doubt, you live, if you are an American, in the most chronically ill society in the history of this planet. Now stop and think about what I just said. You live in a nation that spends more on health care than, I don't know, the next 5 or 6 combined. But yet we have the most chronically ill. Okay? I'm going to break this down just a little bit further. Because anybody who doesn't believe this, there's a few points that we need to go over. And we will. So let's take this just a little bit further. The global population, with special emphasis on the good old USA, as I've already told you, is being consistently poisoned via the following mechanisms: fluoride, GMOs or genetically modified organisms, pharmaceutical drugs, vaccines, geoengineering, biotoxins, environmental toxins, environmental radiation, electromagnetic bombardment, and these are just the main players. It's not the entire list by a long shot. And if one of these days you would like the entire list, that's the entire show. Just reading the list. But these are the Mac Daddies. These are the big ones. These are the ones that are literally killing us. Via these mechanisms, we are being poisoned by the air we breathe, the food we eat, the water we drink, the medications we take, the vaccines we receive, the toys and devices we play with, such as cell phones, computers, Wi-Fi, smart meters, so on and so forth. Each and every one of these mechanisms in their own right, are a severe known detriment to health, especially over long-term exposure. But especially to the health of our vulnerable children with developing brains and blood-to-brain barriers and a developing immune system. But the sheer magnitude of this scenario shows in the fact that they are all taking place simultaneously. All right, we're going to get to the word coincidence a little bit later. Okay, there is solid scientific proof that when a human body is exposed to multiple toxins simultaneously, the cumulative effect is not necessarily additive. In a vast majority of cases, it's magnitudes more harmful. Not just twice as harmful, because there's 2 components. It depends on the reaction between these components. And in a lot of cases, scientists are finding out they're explosive. Okay. Why do I place special emphasis on America? You've heard this over and over again from me. So let's get into that just a little bit. The good old US of A is the most exposed to bio and environmental toxins, the most fluoridated, the most GMO'd, the most drugged, the most vaccinated, the most geoengineered, and exposed to the most electromagnetic bombardment as a society on this planet. Stop and think about what I just said. I don't give a crap how much money you're willing to spend on health each year if as a government you're allowing the degradation of health from known harmful factors. This is exactly what we live in. For anybody who doesn't understand, the military-industrial complex is not the biggest influence on the U.S. government. And if you think so, you're ignorant. And again, I use the word ignorance not as an insult. It merely means you lack the knowledge. Because there's approximately a 400 to 500% gap between the pharmaceutical industry's lobbying budget or influence and that of the military-industrial complex, which probably comes in a very strong second. Listen to me. The pharmaceutical industry, who benefits from a lot of what's going on here, has a 400 to 500%, I don't know, increased budget to corrupt our lawmakers. Have you ever in your life heard of an industry that produces a product where the government itself says it's a crapshoot? They are as safe as they can possibly be, but there is inherent risk. These are vaccines. Any product on this planet that fails, okay, or that puts in danger the lives or the livelihoods of those who purchase it usually doesn't last very long or never makes it. Vaccines, all the way from conception, all the way from the beginning of the production process, all the way through the sale and administration by the doctors. These people are all 100% free of any guilt if anything happens as a result of these vaccines. There's total immunity. That is insane. But that's another whole show, because eventually we're going to be going into each and every one of these components and breaking them down and letting you know exactly how they're affecting you. Okay? The good old USA, again, and I need to emphasize this, is the most exposed to bio and environmental toxins, fluoridated water or fluoride in general, GMOs, drugs, vaccines, geoengineering, electromagnetic bombardment, blah, 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 blah. So let's take a trip down a rabbit hole. America today, okay, suffers the highest levels of cognitive dysfunction. And with that, I mean Alzheimer's, dementia, autism, ADHD, ADD, etc., etc., etc. Because every time you drop a freaking hat, okay, another psychiatrist has come up with another disease for which somebody's got to take very expensive drugs for. Okay, the highest level of autoimmune disorders, which is a list of disorders as long as your freaking arm. The highest incidences of deadly food allergies. Gee, in a country where the food is supposed to be the safest on the planet. And one of the highest levels of diabetes, especially in our children, and rising rapidly. The rising level of occurrences of cancer in both our youth and our elderly. 1 in 3 baby boomers have died from cancer. And again, in another show, we're going to go in and show you exactly why. Okay? The fastest rising level of infertility. One of the highest levels of infant mortality. Wait a minute, we live in America, the most advanced country on the planet. But in the first world, we have one of the worst levels of infant mortality. Are you freaking kidding me? How many of you knew that? One of the highest levels of spontaneous abortion and stillbirth, etc., etc., etc. And all of this in the modern industrialized world, not the third world. And for the most of those mentioned here, we are the gold medal winners on the entire planet. When I stated earlier that you live in the most chronically ill society on this planet today, I was not jerking your chain. This is a fact. How often have you heard this? How often? Okay. We're going to go in a little bit deeper again in future shows on why this is happening. What I'm trying to do today is give you a general outline. I'm trying to poke you and prod you into understanding that if you have a sick nation, you have a nation that is easily controlled because they need your help. Most of them couldn't live even close to a normal life if they didn't have it. And how have you been put there? Tell me that GMOs are a have to be, and I'll call you a liar. Tell me that living in a nation where you have less than 5% of the population, but you're taking 60% of all of the psychotropic or psychiatric drugs on the planet, as dangerous as they are. That's right, 5% of the population, 60% of the psychiatric drugs. Stop and think about all of this. Okay, this is all stacked against us. Right about at this point, if I remember right, there is a meme in this article, and I would like to give you the text off of that meme. You will see it when you look at the article. But it starts off with a bunch of interracial kids all across the top. And below that, it says failing our children. GMOs, biotoxins, carcinogens, pharma drugs, vaccines, fluoride, environmental toxins, wireless radiation, Fukushima radiation, etc. We now live in a society where scientists are stating, listen to me, people. Our children on this generation will be the first generation in recorded history to suffer a shorter lifespan than their parents. Did you ever in your wildest dreams imagine you would be hearing something like this in your lifetime? It's time to wake up. And yes, these are the type of memes I make up. Why? Because if you catch the eye, okay, then there's about a 60 to 70% better chance you're going to capture the mind. So anyway, anybody who doesn't believe that our children will look back on us and what we left for them, this is one of the most critical points in human history. We are at a point right now where we have reached a peak, and there are those who are forcing us over the edge into a decline. This is not a joke. It's not made up. This is a fact, and we're going to show you exactly how this is happening. So let's go on. Okay, the timeline for this massive transformation of America is about 3 generations, as I stated, with the USA being amongst the healthiest nations on this planet in the 1950s, when I was born, mid-50s. Those days are now gone forever. And as a result of all mentioned, okay, our slide to catastrophic health as a nation is all but guaranteed. But even now, the scenario is setting a much worse, exhilarating as our once world-renowned healthcare system via Obamacare is being intentionally dismantled and destroyed right before our eyes. Sure, Trump's doing everything he can to try and put it back together. But I wonder if everybody out there really knows the depths to which it was corrupted. It'll be a long time before good healthcare dawns again in this country. Okay, so basically, President Trump has promised to rescue America from Obamacare, but the jury's still out. And as I stated, what will replace it? And will we in fact be any better off? We can hope we can. To my chagrin, this government constantly claims not to understand the root cause of this massive decline in America's health and doesn't even officially recognize its existence. When's the last time you heard these kind of statistics? When's the last time you heard any mainstream reporter tell you anything you've heard here today? And I dare you to question the validity of anything I've said. Again, I will never challenge you to prove me wrong. I dare you to, because if I can get you engaged, we both win. But you're going to find out that because I say things with angst and a little bit of bravado sometimes doesn't make them any less true. It just makes you listen a little closer sometimes, okay? To my chagrin, as I said, this government claims not to understand. They don't. Sure, we are given reasons for some of the symptoms, but their solutions always seem to benefit the massive government controlling corporate entities, pharmaceutical, biotech, and chemical industries, without any real long-term solution for us, we the people. Treating the symptoms is profitable. Curing the disease is not. And anybody who doesn't believe that, take a look around the planet. Find out the cure rate, okay, for cancer in countries like Mexico, or countries like Spain, or countries that offer cannabinoid treatments or other treatments that you absolutely cannot get in the United States. They're illegal. Okay? They use a slash and burn method. If you are diagnosed with cancer, you are immediately worth an average of $350,000, an average, okay, to the pharmaceutical industry. Why the hell would they ever want a cure? We're talking 2 million people a year being treated with chemotherapy drugs. Okay, and if you stop and figure that each one of those patients could be worth anywhere from $250,000 to $500,000 Average 350,000, I think I was told, and 2 million being treated. Where is there any incentive, any, to cure cancer? In the United States, if you want an absolute cancer cure, you must leave your nation of birth in most cases, or you're going to end up in jail. No, I'm not joking. The biggest issue we face is the convergence of all of these components over the same time frame, all sponsored by or promoted by this very government. Can you say genocide? Yeah, I just said a big bad word. I did. 54% of all of our children in this country today are born with at least one condition they will suffer, chronic condition. They will suffer for their entire life. Most have multiple, and that could either be physical or mental. Whether we discuss autism or we discuss diabetes, 54%, better than half of this new generation, are born behind the 8 ball. Stop and figure it out. There are those who say that by 2025, as many as 1 in 2 of our children born will be born with autism. I absolutely think that these are that's one of the most scary statistics I've ever heard in my life. Because if you project that out, when 50% of a generation born is handicapped, it takes the other 50% to make sure they lead a safe and as productive as possible life as they can. What's left for productivity? What's left for defense? What's left for advancement? What's left for anything? You are looking at the crippling of an entire society. Now that's just autism. Let's take all of the other maladies that could possibly, that are every bit as critical, okay, and add them all into the mix. What if I told you that in 2014, the last year I could find statistics on this, it was stated that the U.S. experienced by the government, a 314,000 birth deficit, and that was 4 years ago. Okay, we're the sickest nation on the planet. Our children sit in classrooms that have Wi-Fi in them. Vast majority of our schools, all over the place, in every single classroom. Okay, the research has been done for our young female children who go from K to 12. Listen to what I have to say. 57% of them will now be sterile when they leave school because of the Wi-Fi. People know these things, okay? This is known. I didn't scrape this out of thin air. I didn't make it up. This is the society we live in today. We are ruled and controlled by those who have one thing in mind. If there are less of us, we're easier to control. And as long as we stay sick, they stay rich. It is a control factor beyond anything we have ever seen. These are, in fact, huge corporations that are controlling what is supposedly a democratically elected government. Can I tell you what that is? Because most of you aren't going to believe what I'm about to say, but it's a fact. When you have such a huge marriage of the power of massive corporations and the state, that's fascism. Look up the definition yourself. Right now, what we suffer more than anything else on this planet is an elitist caste who believes that they have the right to determine the path for 7.5 billion human beings. And in that path, a majority of us are not going to survive. We are in what is technologically the most advanced state the society has ever been in. We have the richest country on the planet we live in, the most innovative, both technically and industrial, and we are the most chronically ill nation on the planet. Can somebody tell me what's wrong with this picture? Because I don't know. Yeah, maybe I do. Again, we have to talk about convergence. If one of these was happening, okay, the massive increase in vaccines, and again, that's another entire show. If that was the only thing that was happening, we could isolate out the issues. We could isolate out the causality. We could make things better. We could apply a lot of pressure. If it was only the geoengineering, if it was only the fluoride, if it was only the drugs, and I could go on. And again, each and every one of them extended over any duration actually goes from dangerous to pretty much deadly. But when you stack them all on top of one another, the synergy could be thousands of times more damaging to the human physiology. And the government needs to approve GMOs and support them and back them. They do. The government needs to support, and in a lot of cases nowadays, mandate vaccines in order for them to be effective and these guys to make money. They do. The pharmaceutical, I could go on and on and on. This is a government that is far beyond complicit. This is fascism in its truest state. Not the freaking conservative on the damn street who thinks Trump makes more sense than your liberal ass does. That's not a fascist. I've just explained to you what fascism is, and I dare you to go look it up. This is what we suffer. Okay. One of the clearly stated goals of Agenda 21, which is now Agenda 30, is the reduction of the global population, and this will be accomplished with the aid of all of the mechanisms mentioned. And some we haven't had a chance to go over yet. This agenda can be accomplished with relative ease and without massive population culling wars. Wars that, I don't know, might leave radiation and all kinds of crap that the elite wouldn't want to live with because we messed up their pretty world. Providing people like you and me, okay? Providing people like you and me don't wake up the masses and push back too hard. To those who would rule humanity, eliminating culling a sizable portion of this planet's population to a more controllable number, the key reason for all of this, as I stated, is not a weight in their conscience. And America has no special immunity from tyranny. Actually, quite the opposite. As those who would play God believe America must be culled or neutered first, yes, I used the word neutered, and brought to its knees in order to keep us, with our cowboy attitudes and freedom-loving spirit, from inspiring an uprising and leading a charge against them globally. That's what's happening right now. That's what's happening right now. It's happening in Italy. It's happening in Greece. It's happening in the Slovenias. It's happening here. It's happening in South America. People are waking up to an oligarchical rule where they thought they had the rule. They thought they lived in democratic societies, finding out they have not. And what's happening is you're seeing a reawakening of that patriotic spirit for that nation that is supposed to represent them. This is what you're seeing. Okay, look, if you believe any of what I've told you, okay, to be false or exaggerated, then please explain why we as Americans suffer the most exposure and fallout from all of the mechanisms discussed here in a huge fashion. And again, they're all being done simultaneously. Also consider that this government elected to serve and protect does nothing to eradicate these blights and overwhelmingly accommodates them. Or is it just all a mistake? Maybe a coincidence? Because let me tell you what I think of coincidences. Far too often, especially in the political realm we live in today, coincidence is the tale of tyrants and the belief of fools. Are you a fool? Can you see past the lies? Do you know you live in the most chronically ill nation on the planet with the biggest, I don't know, health budget and the highest level of technology on the planet? How? Why? Why has the vaccine court, okay, the vaccine injury court, paid out over $4 billion in compensation, and the CDC states that probably only 1% of vaccine damage ever gets reported? If the CDC has published the fact that they have gone over the $4 billion in compensation, and that's only 1%, you better do some math, because what that is telling you, and this is on the CDC's information, I'm not making anything up here, I'm just pretty good at math. $4 billion. If that's 1%, the actual number is 400 billion, which is way more than the total gross national product of most third or even some second world nations. That's what the actual compensation just for vaccines alone would have been if you had the right to sue them and, I don't know, you were taken seriously when you did. If you had the faith to go up and report something, or the knowledge to go up and report something as it actually is. Nobody, bad word, nobody. Very few people in this country know the dangers, the actual dangers of vaccines. And if you think going in to have your child vaccinated, that doctor is going to stand there for an hour to 2 hours, which is what it would take, and give you all the knowledge you need to have informed consent. That's what you're supposed to have, okay? It'll never happen. It will never, ever happen. So that's just one statistic. And again, when we go into vaccines, I'm literally going to curl the hair on the back of your neck, because vaccines, another little tickler, okay? And I can prove this statistically, not a guess. Vaccines globally in the last 100 years, where we've seen since like the Spanish flu, since we've seen their ever rapidly increasing use, are responsible for more human suffering and death than any war in human history. And in some cases, probably a good portion of them all combined. But yeah, you're led to believe this is the safest thing on the planet. We're going to be talking, I promise you. So, now, for all who have stated that these are merely conspiracy theories, again, you're partially correct, because it's a conspiracy. It has to be. Otherwise, all of this information, all of this proof we found, all of this scientific proof and documentation, okay, is just garbage. But we're talking about some of the best scientists in the world that have put out this information. We're talking about peer-reviewed studies. Okay. All one need do is look deep enough. But in a severely sickened and dumbed down society, that may be asking just a little too much. As sad as that sounds, it's the truth. At this point, okay, I believe in that article, you will find a series of videos, one for each one of the mechanisms we described. Okay? There's be a video on vaccines, there'll be a video on drugs, there'll be a video on so on and so forth. And there will also be an Eradicating Programmed Ignorance past show on these topics. All right, I need to let you go because I could sit here and discuss this for hours. And I don't think I could keep your attention that long, even if I yelled like this occasionally, which I do. And I can see the eyeball slamming open. Oh, he's getting freaky again. Look, all I want to do is relay information to you so you stand the best chance of not only keeping yourself healthy, but your much more vulnerable children. And we will explain that in shows going forward, how much more vulnerable your children are. I started this all off by saying we need a nation, a political system that is healthy, but we need a a society that is physically healthy as well. The United States is not only going through one of the biggest turmoils politically we have seen in the last century, but we are also going through a health upheaval, which has doctors stating not only that 54% of our children are, going to have to live a life with a major chronic illness, at least one, some multiple, but that this generation, this last one born, will be the first generation to have a shorter lifespan than their parents. If that doesn't scream volumes, our technology, the money we spend, the nation we live in, none of this should be true. None of it should be true, especially not in America. Maybe, in Pakistan or Zimbabwe. But how the hell does something like that exist in the most advanced and wealthiest nation with the biggest health budget on the planet? All right, people, going forward, hot and heavy. Next week, we'll probably be back on the political scale for at least 1 week because there's a lot of issues charging up and we will be discussing them. Excuse me. I thank you all for your time. I thank you all for your interest. I will always make sure that there is information and article links, whatever, associated with these telepodcasts so that you can delve a little bit deeper and feel a level of comfort that you're not being bamboozled. I have nothing to gain by lying to you. I don't make any money on this. None. The Liberty Beacon gets absolutely $0 from corporate interest. Actually, we get $0 from just about everybody, but that's our issue, not yours. We want to give you the truth, and we are not influenced by dollars in any direction or by anybody. I wish you all a very pleasant day. This has been Eradicating Programmed Ignorance, the Town Crier, brought to you by the Liberty Beacon Project and broadcast on TLBTV. I wish you all a very safe and pleasant week. Talk to you soon.